Welcome to Offwatch, a podcast by the Ocean Race. Welcome to Offwatch, our interview series. This week we sat down with Carolijn Brouwer and she lifted the lid on those final few miles of the last edition and that nail-biting finish in The Hague. Subscribe if you enjoyed this series and let us know who you want us to be talking to next. Enjoy. Today for our Offwatch interview, we're with Carolijn Brouwer, a three-time competitor in the Ocean Race who, along with her Dongfeng Race Team teammates, sailed the final leg of the 2017-18 edition on a nail-biting three-way tie for the final points available. Whoever would finish first in that leg would clinch final victory. In the end, it came down to, well, one tactical decision and the final 20 miles. All of us that were watching the race, following it beat by beat, know exactly what happened there. And we will come to the details in that in just a moment. But Carolijn, you haven't always been an offshore sailor or indeed a multi-crewed sailor as well. You've got 4 World Championship titles in solo classes, as well as going to the Olympic Games 3 times, one of them in the Europe class, the single-hander. You mix into that triathlons, marathons. I mean, you've done a lot of sporting achievements where it's basically just been your shoulders that the performance rests on. I guess what I'm asking is, are you happiest when it's just you out there on the field or in a team, or are you adaptable to both?
I think right now I'm more of a team player, more of a team person. I definitely started as a single-handed sailor. My career in the laser radio to start off with, and then towards the Olympics in the Europe dinghy. I only really started sailing crewed, or it was mostly double-handed at the time, in the 470 dinghy for the Sydney Olympics. And then my last Olympics in 2008 in the Tornado as a mixed team. In between, I'd done a little bit of big boat sailing. I stood on the back and I did the tactics, or I got to helm a couple of times, but no offshore sailing. It was only really when I had the opportunity to sail with Amer Sports 2. It was my very first Volvo Ocean Race in 2001, 2002, that I really started feeling the teamwork and getting into it and realizing how important it is. And I guess important for any team sport, but I think especially for sailing in on big boats, but especially ocean racing and specifically the Volvo Ocean Race. And I really enjoy the team dynamics, being actually just being a small piece of a huge puzzle, that together you have to find all the pieces and make it work. And it's a huge challenge. I think teamwork's probably one of the hardest aspects of ocean racing, of sailing. And I really enjoyed it. And it makes the reward at the end when you can celebrate with your teammates, makes it only bigger.
But as you were saying, obviously you did start out, like most sailors do, in that single-handed category. But, you sort of alluded to it there, but, you did pretty well. So you started out in the Radials, you competed in the Europes. I mean, you had some big successes in those classes.
Yes, I did. I think altogether I won 4 World Championships between the laser radial and the Europe dinghy. At the time, it was the Europe dinghy that was the Olympic class, or the Olympic discipline for women. So it was the one-person dinghy for women. But I was sailing laser radials. I went to the back then IYRU Worlds in 1991 in Scotland, and I won them in the laser radio. And I think it was then when a light switch went and I really started enjoying the competitive side. And I guess a laser, we're always saying about a laser, I've never had to work so hard to go so slow. And it's absolutely true. I mean, there's no doubt about it that it's a very, very tough boat to sail. But at the same time, a lot of the basics that you take along during your sailing career come from a boat like a laser. You learn how to steer the boat very, very well. The technique in flat water, in waves. You learn about the physical side, how important it is, just the weight, a little bit forward, a little bit back, but especially keeping that boat flat. If you have it just that little bit flatter than your opponent, you will be going just that little bit faster. And tactics and strategy. The laser is probably worldwide, one of the most sailed boats. Every local yacht club has a laser. So it's wherever you are, whatever level you're sailing the laser at, it's always competitive. There's no doubt. So I really learned a lot from sailing the laser radial. But as you get better, you also, there's more goals, more dreams, and bigger ambitions. And that's how I then ended up in the Europe dinghy for the Athens Games in 2004.
Well, I just want to wind the clock back a second, because as you say, you went to the Games in 2004. You went to the Games before that as well. I mean, 3 times you've been at the Olympic Games. You get into a team with the 470. Okay, now we've got a teammate. Now we've got another personality on board. I mean, was that a skill to have to sort of grapple with?
Oh, definitely. It's a completely different world. And being a single-handed sailor for most of your life, for all your life, you have to adapt. It's about giving and taking. And we talk about athletes and individual athletes, single-handed sailors. We're very, there's a big ego there. It's all about us. We have a team around us. We have our physical trainer, and we have the doctors and coaches and the whole team helping us. But in the end, it's all about just us, and everyone's working to make us shine out there. In the end, you're the one on the water doing the work. So. And you're also all the controls, you can't really blame someone else. That's the beauty about single-handed sailing. If you mess up, it's your own fault. I always laugh a little bit about the Finn sailors, because the Europe sailors and the Finn sailors, they get compared a little bit. It's sort of similar boats, except obviously the Finn is, for the big guys and the heavy guys, and the Europe is the woman's version, so to say, and just a bit of a finer boat, but in a way quite similar. And Finn sailors, they were coming back from a race and blaming their equipment when they hadn't gone too well in a regatta or in a particular race. And, if you come back in your single-handed boat, in your single-handed dinghy, and you stuffed it up, it's your own fault. You can't blame anyone else. So it's a huge challenge. And, then going from double-handed boats slowly, you start adapting to even more people on one boat and bigger crews.
Well, you say slowly, but obviously the Olympic Games was 2000. Then it was the 2001 edition of the Volvo Ocean Race, where you're there on Ama Sports 2. Now, you completed 2 legs. I think I've got that right. 2 legs of the race. Were you vying for a spot on that team? Did you get the call? What made you leave the 470 for a little bit and sort of jump into a very different beast?
Well, actually, after the Sydney Olympics, I'd only really done 9 months or 8 months in the 470. So it was a pretty radical, short-lived campaign. And I sort of felt I had unfinished business in the Europe. So I slowly made my way back into the Europe class for the Athens Olympics. And then I got the call from Lisa McDonald, whether their team was already complete, but there was one crew member that couldn't do 2 of the legs. And so she invited me to come for a trial, to see if I was fit to fill that spot. And coincidentally, it was the 2 Southern Ocean legs. And when I went to trial with Lisa, I think we sailed the boat from Sanxenxo, Vigo in Spain to Portsmouth. And Lisa asked me when at our first night at sea, she asked me, how many offshore miles have you done, and how often how long have you been at sea for? And I said, well, this is my first ever night at sea. In Holland, we have a saying, I was sort of thrown to the lions. I don't know if you can say that in English, but yeah, I was pretty naive. I didn't have a lot of experience, but hey, it's an opportunity of a lifetime when you get the call. And I've obviously been following the race, and there's a lot of Dutch heritage in the Whitbread race and the Volvo Ocean race. So I've always followed it. And then, yeah, I hadn't really thought a lot about it, but I got the opportunity, and you're not going to say no. I remember Roy Heine saying to me, "You're crazy. What are you doing?" I said, well, if you're my age and you get this opportunity, then you're going to grab it with both hands and go for it. And that's exactly what I did. I had no idea what I was doing out there. I think I was writing my name on the ocean, especially during the night when there was no stars to follow. And I couldn't see the numbers on the mast anymore. And yeah, we did a lot of broaching. I was told broaching is okay, but Chinese jibing is not okay. Don't go there. So yeah, we had, going into Sydney, I think we had bets on, and who had the most broaches had to pay for all the kegs of rum and coke when we got to Sydney at the end of the leg.
I'm just trying to take that all in, because, as you say, that's a short road leading you into the darkest, deepest depths of ocean racing, being down there, in the Southern Ocean. Was it strange to go from a style of sailing where we have safety wind limits? Well, we're not going to sail if it gets too much above this, or if it gets too light, we won't do it. And then suddenly you're in something where it doesn't get more extreme than that, and the race will continue. Was there ever a point where you thought, if I could step off, I would?
Well, funnily enough, during those two legs that I did, no, I didn't. I think we reached Sydney after 28 days. So that was a pretty long leg, and that was my first leg. But I remember arriving in Sydney and just wanting to go again. Whereas, yeah, a lot of the girls off the boat were happy to have a bit of a break. And I was like, I felt like even after 28 days, I was just loving it. I'm just getting into this. I'm getting the hang of this. So I've finally got some hours under my belt driving in the middle of the night. And I'm learning how to do this. But of course, there was some pretty radical moments and intense moments as well, where I think I was sitting trimming the main in front of the steering wheel, and we didn't back then. There was not the big frames and protecting you, and I remember we landed in a wave, and when the water was gone from the deck, my gloves were gone and my beanie was gone, and I ended up with my head in the steering wheel thinking, if the driver now turns one way or the other way, this could end up pretty badly. So for sure there were moments that I was wondering, geez, this is a bit hardcore, but I was loving it at the same time. And I guess I was naive. Back then I just didn't know any better.
And that desire to sort of carry on then, I mean, worth mentioning at this point that, Amer Sports 2 was an all-female team. Did it seem like you had a path to continue that style of racing?
I was hooked straight away, like the first leg, and, the two Southern Ocean legs it was a baptism of fire, it's, I didn't really ease into it slowly. It was full on straight away. But yeah, I think I really enjoyed it a lot. And like I said, the team dynamics, and back then the learning curve was so huge that I was learning so much from the girls. And in the short preparation that we did do prior to the race, we, there was the boys' boat as well, Amer Sports 1, and we were sort of hanging out with them and being able to work with them and work together, which, a lot of Grant Dalton and Bauer Becking and all the guys that are still out there now, just trying to learn as much as possible from them. And I remember, getting off in Brazil and thinking, I got to do this race, but I got to do the whole thing. I want to be back. I've only just started tasting a little bit of what this is, and I want to be back to do every leg and to do the whole race. It was just a shame that it took 12 years before that happened.
The next thing that we see you with is Team SCA, and I mean that team made a big splash when they came onto the scene. You know, how did we go from tornado sailing on a windward-leeward, maybe 45 minutes on the water, we're good, to, right, I'm jumping into a team that's fully committed to this race?
Well, Team SCA was for all of us involved at the time, or just I think for women sailing in general, and particularly women offshore sailing, was a unique opportunity. A project, a campaign like Team SCA, there had been no campaign alike before. There had been a few female boats in the race prior, but this was the only campaign where the sponsor, being SCA, and the reason they sponsored a female team or wanted a female team in the race was because 80% of their consumers, of their clients, were women. So that was the reason for them to want to join the race with a full female team. But it wasn't an A campaign, you know. To compare to Amer Sports 2, that was very much, we were the B boat. It was about the guys winning the race or having a go at winning the race. And the girls were there. Well, there's two boats anyway, so let's get the girls on it, because then at least we have a story, you know, because it's having a full female boat in the Volvo Ocean Race is a story on its own. So it's not a bad reason, and it's also an opportunity for us as women. But Team SCA was something different. It was set up, it had a good budget, we had all the facilities, but we just had a huge gap to close against the guys that had been basically racing around the world for the 12 years that we had been sitting still. So that was a huge goal, a huge objective that we had. But because the campaign started very early, so time was on our side. We started 18 months before the start of the race. We were training, and we had the best guys coaching us and mentoring us, you know, in every area of responsibility, whether it was a sailmaker, the rigger, the boat builders. We had guys mentoring us and helping us and teaching us and trying to help us to close that gap as quick and as fast as we possibly could. It's a dream campaign for every woman out there. And in a way, it's a shame that it hasn't happened again. We have different ways and different opportunities for women now in the race, which is also very cool. But Team SCA was unique on its own, and probably the best thing that could happen to us women, and especially the women that are involved or were involved.
I mean, the legacy of that team is pretty long. I mean, obviously, it got a whole bunch of sailors, female sailors, into the race and gave them that experience. You mentioned the Magenta project, which I'll ask you about in just a minute. But talking to the sailors during that edition on board Team SCA, nobody was there just to take part. Performance-wise, I mean, you won the leg. I'm trying to remember exactly. It was into Lorient, Lisbon to Lorient. Yeah, you won that one. That was a hard leg. I mean, that was an uphill smash. But, you know, in some of those earlier legs, from the pace-wise, it was possible to see the team, frustrated. What was it like being on board that boat where, like you say, that team had made such an impact? There were people wandering up and down the race villages with Team SCA hats, caps. You would have thought it was the Team SCA Ocean Race. And then for those opening legs where it didn't quite go your way, did things get tough internally in the team, or was it, we know what to do in this situation? Was it new ground that you were treading?
I guess, to be completely honest, I think being part of a mixed crew for me is easier than being part of a full female team. But in saying that, it was also something that I had more experience sailing with guys. The big boat sailing, I'd done, just the sailing around the boys in Holland and in Europe was all in mixed teams as well. And obviously I'd had a really intense campaign in the Tornado, being the only mixed team in the fleet. So that for me, it just comes more naturally. So I guess it was a bit of harder work. But at the same time, when you look at Team SCA, I think the preparation was key for us. At the same time, this preparation was very hard because our skipper and the team was actually chosen at quite a late stage of our preparation. So in the beginning, you're actually still each other's competitors in a way, because you're fighting for the same spot. But once the team starts getting shape, then I think what we had was really, really special. If you look back, we started the race with a pool of 14 girls, and we rotated 2 girls for every leg, and that was the plan beforehand, that we would do that. But we started the race with 14 girls, and we finished the race 9 months later with the same 14 girls. And I think, there's something to be said for that, because even if you look at a lot of the male boats, a lot of the guys' boats, there was a lot of rotating and a lot of crew swapping going on as well, which wasn't the case with Team SCA. So I guess you learn a lot as well. There's different ways that you handle certain situations. But because we also had the opportunity to get to know each other very well in the build-up towards the race, because it was a very long build-up, you get to know every single person very well, and you get to learn about each other's strengths and weaknesses. And so, where one just needs a bit of a shoulder tap to feel happy and to feel comfortable again, the next one needs a bit more of a punch in the face, or so maybe it's not the easiest approach, because you have to approach the different crew members differently, but because you know how to approach them, then you do it in the way that works for them, and that's how the whole team works in the end. And I guess if you look back at our results, we had we didn't really have a number as a goal going into the race, like we want to finish on the podium, but I know for myself that we'd had a good preparation and we felt quite ready for it. So I thought, if we can get somewhere close to the podium, that would be pretty awesome. Until we got to Alicante and we sailed leg 0, and we felt like we just got left behind, and just very quickly realized these teams are very, very good, are extremely good. So we sort of had to adjust our goal a little bit and realize that, a top 3 wasn't realistic. But I think we finished leg 1 225 miles behind, and then that got sub 200 in the next leg, and then we had a boat behind us in the next leg, and then all of a sudden we're sub 100 and we're 70 miles behind the last boat finishing. And slowly we were creeping up and we were making the gap smaller, and I think the leg into Lisbon we were 15, 20 miles behind, and then the next leg we won. So we were showing, I think, a lot of progression during the race. And I think the biggest thing for everyone was, once we finished the race in Gothenburg, we all turned around and said to each other, and now we are ready to race. We just needed to have that one race under our belts to be ready to take on the race. And the guys we were racing against, some of them were going around the world for the fifth, sixth, seventh time. They had this huge amount of experience that we were only really getting in that first, in that race. So, yeah, I think obviously we didn't get the opportunity to do it again. But looking back, I think, yeah, we can be very happy with what we achieved.
And not least, as I say, the legacy of Team SCA. I mean, we're right on the cusp now of talking about Dongfeng Race Team. And I want to get to that moment, that final leg. But just before I do, you mentioned before, the Magenta project. So this is a scheme which helps young female sailors that I've come across. I mean, I know how valuable this scheme is. What's it like slipping into that kind of coaching role, that mentorship role where now actually, you're being the wise old sea dog that's imparting that information? Is it a thrill, a privilege to be able to do that?
It's definitely a privilege, and it's a lot of fun as well. I mentored Ariane van der Loosdrecht last year through the Magenta scheme, and we actually only met in person once during that whole time, but we spoke a lot over Skype. And just speaking to Ariane and trying to guide her, and Ariane always had very specific and very good questions, so she also made me think about it. But I recognized a lot of myself in her, and that's quite cool in a way. And yeah, you sort of trying to help them, guide them in that pathway, and it's a completely different pathway. She didn't have the Olympic background that I did, but we learned from the guys because there weren't many other women around to learn from, and the guys having more experience. We have to learn from them. They are the ones with the knowledge and the experience. And now, having had AIMA Sports and done Team SCA, and now my third campaign with Dongfeng, and again having sailed with the men and just soaking up all that knowledge and that information, you reach a moment in I guess in your career where you can say, well, now it's time to pass it on. And especially there's quite a lot of opportunities for girls, for young girls at the moment, not just in the Olympic scene, but especially also in the race, in the ocean race, and just trying to give them those small tips and suggestions and advice to help them learn about it and fast track into ocean racing. So yeah, I honestly hope that some of these girls, and I think they will, end up on some of the Volvo 65s in next year in the race.
And of course, they've got a high bar to meet with yourself because, as we say, you have now won. You are one of the winners, of the ocean race. You're there lifting the trophy. So let's go to Dongfeng Race Team. You characterize your previous two campaigns where you say AIMA Sports 2, a bit of a B-boat maybe, Team SCA, really good budget, full commitment, but maybe lacking on the experience. I mean, how does that compare to then joining Dongfeng Race Team with someone like Charles Cordrellia?
Well, when Charles rang me and asked me whether I was interested to do the next race with Dongfeng, and if we could get together to see whether there was any possibilities. Obviously, it was, it's a no-brainer. I've just finished the race with Team SCA and thinking, now I'm ready to race again. And I get a call from the boat that finished third in the last edition of the race, when we were Team SCA, asking if I want to join them. All of a sudden, you just realize that here's my opportunity to actually have a crack at winning this race. And all of a sudden, your goal is not making it around the world and sailing all the legs, but it's making it around the world, but actually lifting up the trophy at the end. And it was a a very realistic and a good potential, that there was a chance there for me. So yeah, it was no question, and I didn't really have to sleep over it. But it's in a way it felt a bit strange because I knew, well, Axo Nobel was already was the first team announced for the 2017-2018 edition. I knew Team Brunel was going to have another go at it as well. They weren't fully funded yet, but they were they were on the right track. And I was joining a Chinese entry managed by mainly French, being Dutch, and there being 2 other Dutch boats in the race. So in a way, I guess, yeah, there's other people that could be frowning and thinking, why would you be doing this? And immediately when Charles rang, and obviously I knew him from the race before, but we spoke for 2 hours, I think. And when I hung up, I just knew that this was the right thing to do, and that this was the team that I wanted to be part of.
When you say, you've got that little shift where you're thinking now, okay, we've got a chance to win this, Dongfeng Race Team doesn't take a leg win all the way through the race, all the way until that very last leg. Did you feel, were there any discussions, were there any looks in each other's eyes of maybe we won't win this, or this is tougher than we thought, or was the belief always there?
I think the belief was always there, definitely. I don't think we would have won if the belief was not there. Obviously, it was very intense. We were under a lot of pressure going into that last leg, but we weren't the only ones. Brunel and Matfrey were definitely under a lot of pressure as well. And I think it was more the first half of the race where there were a lot of times where we'd be leading for the first half of the leg and then finish second or finish third. But I think it was a really strong point where Charles, whether, I don't know exactly where it was. I think it was whether it was in Itajaí or in Newport, maybe even after. Newport, we had the shocker of the finish where we'd actually probably sailed the best leg that we had sailed until 6 miles before the finish, where, we worked ourselves into first place and then lost it all in the foggy conditions up the river into Newport. So that was quite harsh. And Charles was really strong then. And he said, we're not going to change anything. We're not sailing badly. We need to just keep chugging along as we are. We've proven that we're fast. And we are sailing well. So you can panic at that stage and just go try and do something different because you think boats are catching up or because they are quicker than you. But we kept our calm, and it took a few days for most of us to recover from that leg. That was pretty harsh. But I think, we regrouped and I think Charles really took the lead there and printed into our heads that we need to just keep going as we're going and just go out there and do our best as we have been and just have fun. And I think that's how we approached the next legs. And, they didn't all go our way, but we did keep believing. And I think we had something special with Dongfeng. From the beginning, after that 2-hour call with Charles, I knew that was the team that I wanted to be part of, and I had no doubt about it. And I hadn't even met the other crew members yet. I had an idea who was going to be involved, but I just the priorities that Charles set himself as a skipper. I could really. Lined up very well with how I thought about things. So and he really made a priority his biggest priority was to surround himself by a group of people that he thought he could win the race with. And he didn't surround himself by the 9 best offshore sailors in the world. He just surrounded himself by people that he thought he could live on the ocean for 9 months, and that they were going to work their butts off and always try and be at their best and have a good time together. And that's the group that he created. And yeah, I think that's how we got there in the end.
Well, it got you to that final leg in a pretty good position. I mean, casting the memory back, it's sort of 65 points apiece between yourself, and you had a bonus point waiting for lowest elapsed time.
Yeah,
65 for 65 for Brunel, 65 for Maffrey, and then we come on to this crazy final leg with this sort of bizarre up and down darting between the coasts, all relatively nip and tuck. Then the boats start sailing out into the North Sea, and we get to the crucial moment where every single armchair navigator was convinced that they knew exactly what should be done. You must have known, probably before the leg started, that was going to be a crucial moment. Do you go inshore? There's no going back. It is a full commitment either way. Was there a palpable tension on board, or, was everybody on board, or, at least a Bidiggery? Was the navigator fairly, I know what to do?
We knew what to do for sure, but like you mentioned before, we had decided beforehand where we were going to go, whether we were going to go left along the Dutch coast, or where we were going to go turn right and go offshore. We discussed this, as everyone prepares their legs quite well. This one we prepared better than ever. We were all very aware there was a do or die leg, and I guess one of the key people in our whole preparation, but definitely going into this last leg, was Marcel van Tries, who helped Pascal and Charles preparing for the leg. And he briefed us very, very, very well. And he guided Pascal the right way, maybe gave a little bit more guidance than he would have during other legs. But he the book was there, the plan was there, and he had it ready for us. And he told us, you're going to be sailing 7 miles longer if you choose to go along the coast, along the Dutch coast. And you're going to lose out in the beginning when you take the left turn. And your gains will only come once you turn around the corner in Holland. So you're going to have to be very, very patient, because you're going to lose out in the beginning. And that's exactly how it went, according to textbook. And I remember very well that we're up north of Holland along the German coast, and we had the ley line for this sandbank, and we didn't quite make it. And we had to put in 2 jibes in the middle of the night, and those jibes cost us 8 minutes. And I remember us saying to each other, this could potentially cost us the race, these 2 extra jibes. But once we came around the corner at Texel in Holland, it was a straight line. The wind started building a little bit for us. The current was favorable, and we really never stopped believing. But the funny thing about this, I tell a lot of people this, is you tell people this race was so cool and so awesome because you've been off watch and you come on deck and you see at least 1 boat or 2 boats around you, because it's been such a close race all the way around the world. I mean, we had port starboards with Maffrey in the Southern Ocean. It's unheard of. And that made the race so cool. But especially this last leg, when you actually want to see each other, it was the only leg where we probably couldn't see each other, because there was all these exclusion zones and sandbanks and wind farms. And so it was really, I think we got a sked where with 90 or 95 miles to go to the finish, we were 50 miles behind. It was something crazy. And we just kept telling each other that, we studied this with Marcel. It's still going according to plan. This is where we're going to start making our gains, and they're going to be slowing down out to sea. And it was only when the next sked came, we were about 12 miles from the finish, I think. We still couldn't see the other boats, that a helicopter started flying above our head. And you still don't know, is this a good sign? Is this a bad sign? But it was when the helicopter flew away. It didn't fly back to land, but it actually flew out to sea. And then we knew, we need to keep an eye on this helicopter, because this helicopter is going to where our opponents are. And when the sked came, I remember very well, I think Charles came on deck and was scratching his head, and he was shaking his head, and he said, we're going to lose this race by 2 miles. And that was quite a disappointing moment. But he disappeared back down again, and he came back another 10, 15 minutes later, and he said, no, I've been doing some calculations, and I think we're going to win this race by 1 mile. And I don't know, I think it was 2.7 miles in the end or something. So yeah, it's pretty close.
I admire your confidence, but some of the best navigators in the world saw things differently. I mean, Team Brunel, Mafre as well. Mafre making that last minute decision, really, to break off and go right. Obviously, if they'd have gone the inshore route, who knows? It must have been close. The margin, tactically, navigationally, must have been close, because you're reaching in, like you say, along the coast. And I looked back at the tracker data, which, if anybody wants to do, it's still live on the Ocean Race website. You're going along at about 130 degrees true. The other boats are coming in at about 130 degrees true, but on the opposite jibe. And it comes down to, you get a little bit of a shift. It comes a little bit more, you're a little bit more pressed onto the nose. You just get a little bit more speed. Those tiny degrees of wind angle really made the difference. Was it ever conveyed to you guys when you were discussing the plan how close this was? Because the amazing shot that will always last with me were the tears as you sail through the finish line. And I've always wondered, was it joy or was it relief that the plan came off?
It was pure relief. Of course, we had to keep believing. We knew it was going to be very, very close. And we also sort of knew that once we'd taken the coast routes, that probably the others would go offshore. And I'm not quite sure, but I think Mapfre, they were tempted to come inshore, come along the coast as well, but they were scared that it was going to be too shallow, that they were going to run aground. And there was always that chance as well. I think from then on, we just had to stick to our plan. We couldn't see the other boats, so we just had to keep sailing the boat as fast as we could. And, we were all on deck. We were all as focused as we could ever be, because we knew it was going to be a very, very small margin. And after we'd had that ley line and basically lost 8 minutes, normally you'd say, geez, 8 minutes, 8 minutes in the whole leg, that's nothing to worry about. But in this particular leg, 8 minutes was a do or die. And but towards the end as well, when we saw the boats out at sea, and we knew they had to still do a couple of jibes, and we were on a pretty nice mode, sailing straight to the finish. We sort of knew, and it looked good for us. And you sort of give each other a wink, or you give each other a nudge. But you can only really believe it once you cross the line. Stranger things have happened in ocean racing before. But when you tell people that you've raced around the world for 9 months and it comes down to the last 14 minutes, or, you've sailed 38,000 or 40,000 miles and it comes down to the last 2.5 to 3 miles. It's insane. And I think, yes, especially for Pascal, we're all, as a team, you're under a lot of pressure, but the call that had to be made in this final leg was a very, very bold call, and Pascal dared to take it. He was very much guided by Marcel, and he had the balls to take the decision, and we all stood behind him. And it was, obviously joy, and we did this, but it was relief. Just such a big weight falling off his shoulders. It's amazing.
That footage where you are sailing up to the finish line, nobody's, as you say, no one's celebrating, no one's smiling, and then just at the moment where you cross that finish line, I mean, it was incredible for the fans. The toll that it must have taken on you emotionally, I'm sure, was enormous. As a final question, from everything that you've done in terms of your Olympic campaigns and the ocean race campaigns, you've had a huge success with winning the ocean race, lifting the trophy, and something that, as you describe, has taken years. Along the way as well, you've also fallen short from where you would like to be. If you had successes early on in your career, if you'd managed to get one of an Olympic medal in one of the classes that you raced in, do you think you would have persevered as long as you have and reached this point now? Was it the win that you were chasing, or would you have carried on regardless, even if you have had an Olympic medal earlier on? Is it the racing that drives you on?
I think I dare say that even if I'd had an Olympic medal, this winning the Volvo Ocean Race with the Dongfeng Race Team is better than the Olympic medal. It's the teamwork, the team dynamics, and the fact that you've done this as a group, and the hard work, the sacrifices. Normally, after Team SCA, I have a young son. He was 3-4 during the SCA race, and he was 6-7, going 8 in the Dongfeng race. He's a little boy that's growing up as well. I wasn't there when he got out of nappies. I wasn't there when he lost his first tooth. So it's a huge sacrifices that you have to make. And I think the interesting thing was when I did discuss at home with my family prior to the Dongfeng campaign, how are we going to make this work? I was thinking a lot about the practical side, and can we do this to Kyle again? And, he's going to have to travel the world, because I physically and mentally, it'll be too hard for me to travel back and forth going home. It'll be too draining. So I want my family to come to me, and there's all these choices you have to make. And Darren, my partner, he was very clear about it all. He said, when you speak about the Volvo Ocean Race, there's this, your eyes start shining, and you just look different. Your eyes look different. So you just have to do this. It's a no-brainer. So, but I think, and for me, the teamwork thing is really the reward at the end to have done this with this group of people. It was truly an amazing group of people, and I think the coolest thing to see at the end in The Hague, during our celebrations, because obviously we celebrated quite big, but was the shore crew. Our shore crew partied the hardest. We all partied, but our shore crew partied the hardest. And I think that's the cool thing, that hats off to them, because I guess for them it was the same sort of relief. They had to, for 9 months, and before, during the build-up as well, they had to always deliver a perfect boat to us at the start of every leg. So we were under pressure, but they were under a lot of pressure as well. I'm sure that if something had broken or something had gone wrong, that they would have felt responsible, that they hadn't delivered. And I think for me, that was probably the coolest thing, out of those huge, being part of an historic race like this one with the point so close, going into that last race. I'm finishing in my hometown where I could see my apartment from the finish line, being Dutch and, seeing the biggest crowd I've ever seen to come together for sailing. That's all huge moments. But I think what I remember the most and what will stay with me the longest is the fact how relieved and how happy the shore crew was, and that they celebrated with us and celebrated more than us. And I think, that really shows the connection, and, that Dongfeng Race Team was a pretty special team.
Oh, Carolijn, thank you very much for talking us through your sailing and showing us just how much that moment and that win has meant to you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.